Is there anyone who promises to change your life for the better and dictates how you act? Today we're going to tell you a story that just could make you see this person in a different light. Larry cooked steaks in their kitchen and slept on a couch in their common space. The girls and boys living in the dorm didn't really care the man was freshly out of prison. Well, Talia told everyone her dad served a term because of some bad people. But in real life, he's a superhero. Her parents are divorced, so he needs a place to stay. Only for a couple of weeks. It all began in September of 2010. A brick house on Slonim 9 stood hidden between old elms and oaks. The hefty, balding Lawrence Ray became the 9th resident of the dorm, and he was nothing like these fragile, bookish students. Sarah Lawrence College near New York is an old and prestigious school. Established in the 1920s, it was originally meant for women, and apart from the usual curriculum, they had to do 8 hours a week of gardening or shorthand or even makeup. Now, people of all genders study here. They pursue various courses in creative writing, music, dance, history, and natural studies. The dorm dwellers had their minds on higher callings rather than the house chores, and Talia's dad had willingly took it upon himself to clean and cook for everybody. Eventually, he became something of a host. Larry blended in, he was helpful, and the students liked him. His influence grew by the day, and soon enough, their host became their guru, and the housemates virtually put their lives into Larry's hands. For the time being, it's all nice and dandy in Slonim Woods 9. The residents have dinners together and gradually start calling them family dinners. Larry Ray would put in a word here and there about his incredible past. Turns out he negotiated a ceasefire in Kosovo. Turns out he had some undisclosed dealings with foreign politicians. Turns out he worked for the FBI. From the government, he learned various secret techniques to control the mind. Mr. Ray knew exactly how to become disciplined and keep your head clear, and he was ready to share his knowledge with the art students. Quest for Potential, or Q4P, is a philosophy devised by one of Larry's friends, David Birnbaum. According to him, infinite quest for potential in league with physics math acted as a catalyst for the route to high-level humans in the 21st century. Larry decided to turn these sophomores into high-level humans, and so they set out on this wild, inhumane quest. Everything that happened along the way was captured with a phone camera by Isabella, Talia's best friend. She'd just parted with her boyfriend and had a hard time dealing with the breakup. This beauty needs help, Larry proclaimed, and started giving her so-called therapy sessions, which soon were held in the girl's bedroom. In 2011, a one-bedroom apartment on East 93rd Street in New York became the second place after the dorm where Larry and his suite resided. 5 students came to live here: Talia, Isabella, Santos, Daniel, and Claudia, and of course, Larry himself. Here's what Daniel says about that summer break. "I didn't want to go back home, and this was my alternative. Part of why I got in a cult at all was because I had no idea how one finds a place to live in New York." The closer the students got to Larry, the further they drifted away from their relatives. By their 3rd year, most had gone no contact with their families. "I can't reach you. What changed? I don't understand. This only seems to happen when you're at Larry's, but I can't figure it out. Are you in a trance? Drugs?" That's an email from Daniel's father. In the New York apartment, Larry felt like a real host, and, well, he actually was one. He treated the students to expensive meals and clothes, showing off his cash. In return, they had to hold on to the Marine Corps values: discipline, healthy food, early rising. Moreover, the kids had to report to Larry on everything they did during the day, and then analyze each deed with him in great detail, for hours, at night. The man took prescription amphetamines, and frequently the dosage was so high he had no need for sleep, while the students could barely keep their eyes open. Nevertheless, the nightly sessions were compulsory for all the residents of the small flat on East 93rd Street. In a little while, Larry's therapy became obtrusive. One of the students, Daniel, played the ukulele. And what's wrong with that, you might ask? Well, Larry Ray took it as a sign of weakness that had sprung from the boy's past psychological trauma. He ordered Daniel to break the instrument. Daniel didn't like the idea, and the argument lasted half the night. Finally, the boy gave up and trashed his ukulele. He simply wanted to go to bed so badly. One other part of Larry's self-perfection program was a sex ed of sorts. He gave advice but also held practice sessions. Daniel remembers at the time, it seemed that everyone around him thought it was all good. It was all part of some inner liberation process. So then, how come Daniel didn't like it? It must be him, Daniel, who's off the course, not Mr. Ray. If you don't obey Larry's orders, or if you make mistakes, trivial, like breaking a plate, you sabotage your self-improvement, and these slip-ups are to be punished. That was the line adopted by Larry, and the students agreed to it, or so it seemed. Each day, Larry's presence was building up. When one of his followers, Santos, broke the stove, Ray held a knife and threatened to dismember him. Later, he'd convinced the student that the damage cost was $100,000 and that Santos was in for a 400-year prison sentence. Dan's situation was no better. Talia had missed the application deadline for Stanford Law School, so her father ruled that Daniel was to blame. He'd been distracting the girl, and for that, Larry subjected the boy to gruesome physical torture. But even after the ordeal, Daniel stayed in the cult. It was during another incident that he reached his breaking point. The thing is that Dan had doubts about his orientation, and once he reminded Larry of it. The man made him go down into the building's lobby in a woman's dress, and then he held another torture session for Dan. After such humiliation, the boy finally made up his mind to leave the cult. Later, he'd write a memoir, Slonim Woods 9. But for the others, the torture was far from over. This is Claudia from Los Angeles. Her classmates knew her as a cheerful fantasizer. She wrote poetry and was a good storyteller. Sometimes she'd practice the art of acting by pretending she fainted during a class or narrating anecdotes of how she was kidnapped. As it turns out, though, that Larry was a fully fledged fantasizer himself. In his mind, Claudia had schizophrenia, and he made sure to beat it into her head, along with the notion that, in order to survive with such a diagnosis, she had to submit herself to military discipline. No other way around. And so, Claudia resolved to live her life according to the Marine Corps rules. As if under a spell, the girl obeyed Larry and did everything he coached her to do. Meanwhile, Claudia's parents divorced, and a contributing factor was the stress they experienced because of how their daughter changed. By the end of 2013, Claudia started living in hotels, and then in 2014, she took up a new job. It was nowhere near her field of college training. The student put up an ad online, offering escort services. For at least 4 years, she was doing prostitution and giving all the money she earned to Larry. Here's what Mr. Ray would tell journalists later on. I genuinely always believed that Claudia genuinely felt very guilty. I generally believed that Yali felt very guilty, and I genuinely believed that Santos felt genuinely guilty. But they didn't end up doing the right thing. The only one who tried to do something was Claudia. Larry publicly admitted that he had taken the money, but why? What was the girl's fault? The man would cite another, pretty extravagant reason.
Did you in fact poison me?
Yes, absolutely.
Go ahead.
So I came up four times, I think, or 3 times.
What's more, in 2015, a weird and surreal trial took place. It was a civil case, but in the hearings, the lawyers had to give ear to some conspiracy theories. Lee Chen, the actual owner of the apartment Larry occupied on East 93rd Street, wanted him out. For a long time, he'd been friends with Larry and even attended some of the so-called practice sessions in sex ed. But in 2014, he realized that the things happening inside the apartment were beyond common sense. Mr. Chen saw it clear as day that his former friend was simply tormenting the women. But Larry had no intention of moving out. Instead, he countersued the apartment owner. The hearings began. Arsenic, cyanide, mercury, silver, and lead. This is the list of chemicals that Claudia tried to poison Larry with, in her own words. She made this statement in court, even though the case in point had nothing to do with it. Claudia told all those present that Mr. Ray took good care of the girls, and of her in particular. It was she who harmed him. Some mysterious bad people told her to destroy Larry Ray. The other girls from their group repeated the statement word for word. Only in 2018, Claudia finally left the cult. It happened after Larry tied her to a chair and nearly suffocated her with a plastic bag. The girl's mother says it took a very long time for Claudia to get back to her normal self. So who really is this Larry Ray, and how come he was able to bewitch so many people? Maybe a glimpse into his biography will give us some clues. Larry never had a college degree, but he sure was charismatic enough to make an impression. That was probably the main reason he managed to build himself a good career. He was a consultant in insurance, construction, and finance. He was a partner in the Malibu nightclub in New Jersey. He owned a domain name business. Lawrence Ray mingled with politicians, business owners, and the military. At one point, he even became an informant for the FBI, on his own initiative. Larry used to come to the FBI office several times a week to relate new details about a fraud scheme. But soon, the agents found out that Mr. Ray himself was part of the scheme, that he manipulated facts and lied. As a result, Larry got a 5-year suspended sentence. What's more, while under indictment for the stock scam, Larry asked one of his top cop friends for help. Allegedly, the commissioner gave him the cold shoulder, and thus became one of those many dark, ominous figures in Larry Ray's tall tales. He claimed that Carrick and his people were out to get him, and that they hired numerous hitmen to deal with him. But something always went wrong. In 2006, while still on probation, Larry was arrested for the assault on his then-girlfriend. The woman then reported it to the police, but soon dropped the charges, probably in fear of her own well-being. To elaborate on the topic of his personal life, it's worth mentioning that Lawrence Ray didn't shy from manipulating his own family, and at times, he succeeded. In 2004, his wife Teresa filed for divorce. In return, Larry came up with accusations. He said his wife abused their 2 daughters, and Talia, the eldest, took her father's side and stated that her mother beat her. The lawyers, though, concluded that her statements sounded rehearsed. When the psychologists asked the youngest, then 4-year-old daughter if her mama ever beat her, the girl laughed and said, "That's what Daddy tells me to say." And here's an excerpt from the psychological evaluation of the family members submitted to the court. He's able to manipulate and control almost any situation in which he finds himself, including a psychological interview with a forensic examiner. Mr. Ray can be utterly charming, and one can be disarmed by his childlike simplicity and smile. But Mr. Ray is no child. He's a calculating, manipulative, and hostile man. At long last, the mother gained full custody of her children. However, Larry refused to give the daughters to Teresa and eventually got a sentence for interference with child custody. The next stop after his release from a New Jersey prison was Slonim Woods 9. The Stolen Kids of Sarah Lawrence. This was an article published in a New York magazine. 2 journalists, Ezra Marcus and James Walsh, investigated the case of the young people that Larry Ray gathered around himself, and this very article prompted the official investigation. In April of 2022, Lawrence Ray was found guilty of racketeering, violent assault, extortion, sex trafficking, forced labor, tax evasion, and money laundering. He now faces a minimum of 15 years in prison and a maximum of life. The sentencing is supposed to be in December of 2022. His so-called top lieutenant, Isabella Pollock, the one who took videos of Larry torturing the other students, pled guilty too. and now she's waiting for her own sentence, facing up to 5 years in prison. The student's parents tried to alert the police many times, but the authorities were unwilling or unable to help. Larry's cult followers were all over 18, legal adults. In other words, they stayed with the man of their own free will. But human will, as we found out, can be manipulated too. Keep that in mind and stay safe.